Howdy, folks. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. Happy pre-July 4th day. We will not be having a show tomorrow. Obviously, for July 4th, I'll be loaded up with hot dogs and hamburgers. And Hebrew National hot dogs, by the way.
Of course.
Of course, they were on sale. But Russ, you have some pre-show stuff for us.
Yeah. First thing, let's talk about not so much the outcome of the Mets-Yankees game. That's not really important. Something that was said during that game was important.
Okay.
Bob Costas decided. This is Bob Costas.
It was on MLB broadcast because I was watching the Michael K. Yankees.
This is on the MLB broadcast.
Okay.
He was on there with Jim Cott. Mm-hmm. Bob Costas decided that if DJ LeMahieu gets the batting title in the American League, that he is the true first guy to ever do it in both leagues. And that's not true. Ed Delahanty did it.
Right.
But he did it in an era that, yes, the game was a little different, and you have to, look at those things and see how the scoring was. But you don't get to just poo-poo it to fill your narrative. The reason I wrote that book by Pioneers of Baseball and used all those photos was so these guys don't get forgotten. Ed Delahanty is a Hall of Famer. You don't just push it aside and say, well, no, he's not the first guy to do it. Now this guy is. Just because you're doing a Mets-Yankees broadcast, that's baloney.
Yeah, it's funny because I do a weekly spot on a Buffalo radio station, talk most about hockey. But when we were a couple weeks ago, when LeMahieu was having his he was hitting 509 in his last 50 at bats, we were talking about players who had batting titles, but not there hadn't been anybody in both leagues, and the closest was Frank Robinson or who won an MVP.
I thought that closer than Frank Robinson.
Who?
Willie McGee. If you remember when he got traded
to Oakland.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was at St. Louis and he won a batting title. I think he had 353 or something like that. And then he got traded to Oakland when he was still relatively in his prime. Yeah, that's a good one. But but the thing that we brought up was that most of the time the good hitters, even into the 70s and 80s, they stayed within their particular leagues. They didn't switch. Wade Boggs went from Boston to New York to Tampa. He stayed in the American League East.
That's true. And no slight to LeMahieu, a lot of people probably don't even know he got the batting title because there's no emphasis anymore on great hitting. There's more emphasis just on home runs. And if you watch last night's game, Jeff McNeil is a revelation to watch, right? Because his first at bat, he actually, for one thing, he has no knob on the bottom of his bat, right? Which is great. That's like a throwback to the old hitters. He has no knob at all. So he has full control over that bat, but you have to really have good bat control to do that, right?
Sure.
And so his first at bat, if you remember, he just dropped the bat down, hit the ball up the middle, and Gregorius made a great play on it, but he legged it out. That's what Jeff McNeil does to get on base, to produce runs. That is a lost art in baseball. So here's the second part. You'll like this. Second part, today is Superman Day. I didn't know it until Pee Wee Herman retweeted this Superman from 1940 with that original logo. I didn't even know there was a series in 1940. I always thought George Reeves was the first one. Anyhow,
it wasn't TV in 1940. So
it might have been a silent film one, right? I don't know.
Okay.
So anyhow, I thought it'd be fun to say, let's figure out who the worst Superman was. Because, I think that the worst one is harder to figure out than the best.
I think the worst one is Brandon Routh.
Brandon Routh.
I think that's his name. He was the one that was in the one with Kevin Spacey and.
Oh yes.
Yes. Yeah. He was the worst. I think Henry Cavill was okay.
Yeah, Cavill was okay. George Reeves was obviously good.
I think Christopher Reeve is the best one.
He's the best one. Yeah, I think you might be right there.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any other. Now, do we count Smallville's too, or we don't count?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we count Dean Cain, Lois and Clark? I mean,
I think Dean Cain's in the mix, and that's why he's on the edge. I
never watched Smallville, so I can't really attest to the quality of.
I'm going Dean Cain is the worst.
Oh, really?
He was a good Clark Kent. But that's what it was. Dean Cain in real life is more like Clark Kent than Superman, and that's why I never bought it
I know why you're saying that Dean Cain is the worst, because he used to play football and he used to play for the Bills.
No, that's not why. Actually, he's a Princeton guy too. I cover Princeton, so I like him. I'm still going to go with Dean Cain as the worst.
All right. Okay, we'll get started here. We may be joined by Peter Tessier. He may have overslept today. Hello, Hockey.
Thinking I was an alarm clock like Bill de Blasio. Anyhow, go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, we know. And also about Bill de Blasio, he has a hammer and sickle tattooed on his ass. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Wednesday, July 3rd, 2019.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Comrade Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. All right, let's start with this, because I heard something after the fact yesterday that I thought was fairly interesting about the Carolina Hurricanes matching the Aho offer sheet. We won't go on for a half hour about this, but I thought this was interesting. In retrospect, after Carolina matched it, the criticism really started to get focused on Marc Bergevin because the contract that was signed. Now, granted, Aho has to agree to it. So if Aho is stuck in negotiations with the Hurricanes and they're offering him 7.5, then an offer of 8.5 with it front loaded is something that he says, sure, I'll sign that, because, if worst comes to worst, I go to play in Montreal, best case scenario, or, whatever, either scenario is acceptable to him, but he's getting the money. But the criticism of Bergevin, I know Gord Miller from TSN was on Toronto radio and was talking about this, and I think they came like $1 short of going to the next level, and that was calculated, and they front-loaded the deal. But everybody looked at that deal and said, Carolina was celebrating when that was signed because it was not outrageous. And again, this is the flaw on free agency. You have to make a deal that it's onerous for, and then Kevin said this a couple of weeks ago, it has to be onerous for not only the team that signs it or matches it, but the team that signs it. So it's like, you knew that there was no way that Carolina wasn't going to match it unless Thomas Dundon was Donald Trump, the Donald Trump of the NHL, and misrepresented how many billions he had.
How about this? How about Marc Bergevin just winning the psychological battle here? Because he gets the guy to sign the offer sheet. He probably knows he's not going to win the offer sheet. But now it's pretty much out there that Sebastian Aho really doesn't want to play for the Carolina Hurricanes. Like, if you start reading the articles, he really would like to play for the Montreal Canadiens. He really does. He doesn't get a choice now. But now you've got a player in your midst, and we went through this with O'Reilly, right?
Right.
Players start looking at it and saying, well, if you don't really want to be here,
right?
So that's why I think in a year or so, maybe 2 years, he's going to get traded.
Right, but it probably will not be to Montreal unless Montreal makes the best offer.
Well, right. We don't know, right? But if nothing else, Montreal may be successful in removing Sebastian Aho from Carolina in the future. He might.
Now, this possibility was sort of poo-pooed by Kevin, but I just want to revisit it for a second. Do you think that Bergevin did this to set up another scenario, say Winnipeg, where now he goes, well, I offer sheeted Aho, I'll offer sheet Connor unless we can work out a deal? Do you think it was done?
No, I don't think he's going to do that.
Okay, so you don't think it was targeted? You don't think it was leverage? You don't think it was?
No. I think this is one that he targeted. He probably had an idea that Aho really wanted to play for his team anyhow.
Right.
So why not take a shot for it? But that's the part that everybody's overlooking is like, hey, yeah, obviously a guy wants to play for a team because he signed the offer sheet. But if you read the articles, he really wants to play for them. It's not just like, yeah, I'd play for the Canadiens if they paid me the most. No. He really wants to play for them. And that's something now we have to kind of look and see what that does to the locker room in Carolina.
Yeah, you can't undo that. And honestly, the thing is that locker room. I mean, right now that for a team that got to the conference finals and then they ran out of gas against the Bruins, for a team that achieved so much last year. I mean that they're in a state of flux right now because Justin Williams hasn't been re-signed yet. There's some question about whether he's coming back or not. Maybe maybe he retires, maybe he goes someplace else. But he was a leader on that team. They traded Calvin DeHaan. They've lost their Calder Cup winning coach. We've talked about their organizational deficiencies in terms of losing the goaltending coach and scouting directors and things of that nature. Now all of a sudden your top player is saying, I'd rather play someplace else. I mean, this is really a destabilizing last 6 weeks for the Carolina Hurricanes.
Here's something that Jerry Johansson said a day ago on The Athletic.
And this is Aho's agent.
Aho's agent. We've had good conversations with them, but we just weren't able to get a place where we were able to agree. Maybe we would have in 3 months, but as of a couple days ago or a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we weren't.
Right.
It left the situation open for Montreal to make a move, and they did. See, this is something, again, Tom Dundon hopefully learned a lesson from this, because if he'd have locked up his player, none of this would have happened. We wouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah, and I think I wrote about this yesterday, and it was interesting that Kyle Dubas made a comment. He was interviewed on TSN Radio in Toronto yesterday, and it was like he read, and I'm not taking credit for this, but it was like he read my blog from a few days ago, or was listening to the Buzzcast, because essentially he said the comparables of Aho and Timo Meier were good news for a lot of these teams. I can read the quote directly, but I'm paraphrasing here.
Right.
And it is, because now if say Aho had been signed to a $10.5 to $11 million offer sheet, then you could say that Darren Ferris, when it comes to Mitch Marner or whoever represents Connor or Point is Johansson, or Matthew Tkachuk, that they could say, well, we think we're as good or better than Aho, so we deserve in that same area. Meier signed $6 million for 4 years, and this is the thing I don't understand. I have to quibble, and maybe I'm wrong here, with the Cap Friendly, who's got him as an RFA after the 4-year deal. He's played 3 years in the NHL, so I believe he would be a UFA after that contract. And now Aho with 5 years making 8.4. I don't know what leg to stand on Tkachuk, Point, all these Rantanen, all these other guys. If they're going to ask for 8 figures, I don't know where they're going, because unless there's another team willing to send out an offer sheet.
Yeah, I think the difference here is they didn't reach a ceiling price-wise with Aho, right? They kept it at a certain level.
Right.
Most teams, even if you're going to make an offer sheet for Marner, they're going to reach a ceiling that they don't want to pay either.
Right.
That's the problem.
And then, I mean, then I think that, it's sort of pie in the sky for people out there to think, oh, a team is going to offer an offer sheet to punish the team that matches, meaning like Toronto's going to match no matter what, but we're going to make it painful for the Leafs. So we're going to sign him to an $11.5 million offer sheet. Well, the problem is that you don't know for sure if they're going to match. And then if they don't, then they get your 4 first-round picks, and you get a contract that is probably, you meant to hurt them, but it's going to end up hurting you. So that's the only thing with Bergevin, is like, that's a contract that was acceptable to them, and it ended up being acceptable to Carolina. What I think is going to happen here is you're going to see a slow play of all these free agents. I think we're going to be talking about them until September.
Yeah, we are. I mean, nothing. The fast ones got done. Now it's just going to be a slow boat. I agree with that. So I don't know if you saw Artemi Panarin put on his Ranger jersey. Everybody does their best social media play right out of the gate. And already friends of mine were saying that they were getting calls on re-upping their season tickets. Like, this is the business side that happens when you spend a lot of money on a free agent. But you've got to strike while the iron's hot, while people are excited. Mm-hmm. I get it. I still applaud the move. JD threw some shade, John Davidson, on the Islanders and other organizations.
Small market teams.
Small market teams.
Like Columbus, where he just came from.
Yep. He knows what he's doing. But I do want to get back to the Islanders, because there's an interesting thing with this. I got a bunch of texts yesterday. One of them said they didn't get any better. Nobody new was on the team. And that's true to a degree, because you've swapped out goalies. You've re-signed Lee. You lost Filppula. You haven't picked up any extra scoring, and they're going to need it. So they didn't do that.
And according to our Cap Central, they have a little under $9 million in cap space with Beauvillier and Del Cole to sign. And after that, they'll probably have maybe $4 million in cap space. There's not a lot of room for them to add when you look at Lee at 7, Nelson at 6, Andrew Ladd gets probably buried on LTIR, Eberle at 5.5, Bailey at 5. You've got a lot of players in that $5 to $7 million range who are good but not great and not star players. And you're gonna have to keep your powder dry for Barzal next summer.
So basically this is getting heaped on the coaching staff, and Islander fans are pretty much going to have to believe that they're going to do it like they did it last year, without necessarily improving with the defense getting a year older. But my other issue is this. We keep hearing, well, the Islanders were in on this guy, and they were in on that guy, and they were in on this guy. But how come they never spend that money on the next guy? Like the minute they're out on Panarin, they didn't spend Panarin money. They just went and gave Lee what they were going to give Lee. Right. When they were out on Tavares, they didn't spend that money on somebody else, that same money or close to it. They just said, all right, we didn't get Tavares. That's fine. We'll go a different way. But you see what I'm saying? They never seem to put that money back in.
No, they're sort of a one-target market.
Right.
They center on one person, and if they don't get that guy, then they don't move to. They don't have a plan B. I mean, I don't think Lee was a plan B. I think it was a fallback.
Yeah.
I
still think that too.
Yeah, and I saw, and I'm not. They can say anything that they want. Neil Sheehy was Lee's agent, and he said that Lee didn't negotiate with anybody. If they didn't negotiate with anybody,
but he talked to teams.
Right. If they didn't negotiate with anybody else, then you're at fault as an agent. You have to make sure, because I'm sure at 1:00 on July 1, before Panarin signed with the Rangers, Lee thought he was, and if Panarin goes to the Islanders, I don't think, because do you think Lee is taking a 4 or 5 year deal instead of a 7-year deal? I don't think so.
No, that would have, if the Islanders would have landed Panarin, it would have drastically changed their plans. It would have.
Right.
There's no way around it. So, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of faith on the island, and I get it because there's Trotz and Lou and Mitch Korn. But for Varlamov, his best days are behind him. I mean, we could say that with all certainty. Now, he's had moments, even moments recently with Colorado where he's looked really good again, but Colorado didn't even have faith in him, right? They didn't.
Right. They started Grubauer in the play. Right. So, I mean, I don't have any problem with, I don't have any concern with Varlamov's performance level. I think when he plays well, he's one of the better goalies in the league. It's durability and it's inconsistency. He when he doesn't play well, he's a liability sometimes. He's a very hot and cold goalie.
Now, Edgar has a good point. You know what he said? He goes, look, shame on Nassau County and everything for dragging this out. And he's right. It is screwing up everything the Islanders do. Now, he also said, hey, the Islanders have good prospects. They do. I would never say the Islanders have bad prospects. They have some excellent ones. Most just aren't ready yet. That's just the way it is. That's just the reality, right? But the Nassau County situation is screwing up the team, how they operate, how much they want to spend, how it is. Because it's also affecting when Artemi Panarin goes there and they're like, well, 3 years into your deal, you'll only have to go to one place instead of two. That's off-putting. It is.
I have to say, though, it was funny because apparently after he signed, Panera Bread went on Twitter and congratulated Breadman for joining there. I'm waiting for the Panera Bread commercials with Panarin as their spokes guy.
It's gonna happen.
Sitting in a booth with Henrik Lundqvist,
right,
sharing a broccoli and cheddar soup and a sandwich.
And the mac and cheese. But this wasn't going to happen in Columbus, right? Even though Panarin's a great player, but you just made commercial with Lundqvist in it. It's a guarantee,
right? It's gonna be as bad as the Pasternak penalty box Dunkin' Donuts commercial.
Well, I think Lundqvist is a little better actor than Pasternak, but that not much.
Okay. Couple things. The reports are indicating regarding Tyler Myers that Myers didn't talk to. No, again, do you believe this, or is this just post-signing spin that Tyler Myers didn't talk, or he took considerably less to sign with Vancouver, and that there were other offers out there, and he sort of just like, no, I'm going to the Canucks.
I don't believe it.
Yes.
I believe, like Peter was saying, and we were sort of surmising that the market had shrunk on Tyler Myers.
Now, the interesting thing, and we'll switch to who hasn't been signed yet. Now, looking at the list, obviously Cap Friendly bases the unrestricted free agents based on their salaries from last year. So guys like Phaneuf and Marleau are at the top of the list. Jason Pominville, who I haven't heard a peep out of in regards to Buffalo re-signing him, but I think they might if it's like $1 million and a half after he was making close to $6 million last year. I think everybody knows Marleau is gonna go back to San Jose unless that door is closed to him. But I don't think that they would have gone through this whole. I know the Leafs would have gone through trading him to get somebody else to buy him out because they needed to. But I think Marleau wants to play in San Jose, and now with Pavelski gone, this would probably be a good fill-in for that loss. And Joe Thornton, who turns 40 today, apparently, is probably going to go back. But if you look at some of the players who have not signed yet, the first one that pops out here is Marcus Johansson. And we've talked about this before, but I'm not expecting him to make big money. I don't think he's going to make Gustav Nyquist money, but I'm a little surprised that he's still out there.
I'm telling you, that last half of the Stanley Cup hurt him. It did. I think if he would have performed well in the Stanley Cup, Boston would be re-signing him.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the thing is, though, is that I think the first half should help because he was really one of their better players against Toronto in the first round.
He was, no question about it.
Yeah, so maybe he got. The thing is, we know how that goes in the playoffs. That players get hurt and they keep playing even though they're hurt, and their effectiveness dwindles.
But I will tell you this, and because of the Coyle trade and other trades like that, you're getting graded heavy on the postseason now. You are, because teams now know and realize, and they've always realized, that some players will get you there in the regular season, but some don't in the postseason.
Right.
Well, I'm not saying Johansson's definitely that guy, but he's starting to fall more on that side. And that, I think, is hurting his marketability.
We'll take some questions in the chat at the end here, just for people, but if you want to put them in there or wait until I say go ahead. But now, okay, clearly guys who are not going to get contracts ever again. Dave Bolin, at 33 years old, is probably going to retire. We'll go into this more extensively, deeper into the month because I think these guys will still be out there.
We got nothing else to do.
Right, and we have nothing else to do. Andrew McDonald. Now he was bought out by the Flyers. Is he still serviceable?
He is serviceable. I don't know if he's even an everyday player anymore, but he's serviceable. Like, you want to use a guy he's more serviceable than Luke Schenn. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay.
I know I set the bar low with that. Go ahead.
I'm just tweeting Peter because he just tweeted something to us. And
okay, is he on an island, stuck on an island somewhere?
he's drinking a Mai Tai. But no, the question I had, and I obviously in my function as the Leafs columnist for Hockey Buzz, I'm always looking at the connections with the Leafs, and I'm looking at their roster now. They have a top four, but with Travis Dermott out for probably the first month of the season at least, and bottom pairing guys like Marinson and Kevin Gravel and Ben Harper. It's not a great group. Whether now with Dave Hackstall in Toronto as an assistant coach working with the defense, whether Andrew McDonald would be a 1-year minimum type guy that would work.
I don't think Toronto should do it. Amac can skate. He can run the power play if you need him to.
Right.
But he does have some great hiccups in games that cost you.
And that's why, and he's from Southern Ontario, and that doesn't mean anything more than I'll just say it. But a guy like Dan Girardi would make a lot of sense.
He's a lot better to have because at least Dan Girardi, if he's not having a great season, I'm still going to put him out on the ice last 2 minutes of every period because he's going to get the puck away from the net and out of my goalie's crease. Dan Girardi will always do that.
Right.
AMAC will do that. And actually, to be honest, the Leafs need that more.
Yeah, I mean, the Leafs penalty killing pairing last year was Ron Hainsey and Zaitsev. They're now in Ottawa. Right now, I think their number one pairing for penalty killing as it stands right now would be Jake Muzzin and either Cody Ceci or Martin Marincin. Muzzin's good.
Right.
The other one is not. So that's why I think, you're going to see Toronto probably sign 2 or 3 more of these veteran guys on minimum deals that Dubas said he was going to. And that I think that, you're going to see, a Girardi, if he would take, we know that no defenseman, unless it's a guy who's barely an NHLer, is going to take a minimum deal. But if Girardi would take $1 million or $1.5 million on a 1-year deal, I think that would be a perfect fit for the Leafs.
I agree. I did want to mention the signing yesterday.
Yeah.
The signing of Anthony Stolarz by the Ducks was a pretty astute signing. That's a good word.
Well, do you believe that Brian Miller is not going to be durable enough to survive the season, or
that's why I think they did it because
or even Gibson?
Right. I think that's why they did it. And you know what? Stolarz isn't a bad guy. If you have to bring him up, put him in there for a week or two. So I think that's great for the amount they got him, which is like $700,000, I think.
Yeah,
smart.
No, I think you're seeing. I think you're seeing a little foresight with a lot of these general managers this year about not only getting themselves a backup who can play games, but a third goaltender who can play in the NHL.
Right.
It's like that's why basically I think that right now, like the Leafs re-signed Hutchinson. I think Hutchinson will be the backup.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Garrett Sparks will ever play another game as a Maple Leaf.
Not unless they have to.
Unless they absolutely have to. But the thing is that he's there, and in case somebody gets hurt, if they don't trade him, which I still think is a good possibility, maybe they trade him for another backup goaltender, but maybe they trade him to somebody who's looking for a third goalie. A lot of teams are getting those third goalies, and it does make a lot of sense for them.
It does. And actually, I know he was one of 8 last year, but Stolarz proved that he's come back strong from his injury. That was what we all needed to see.
Right.
Ducks saw it. They pounced on it.
Now, Peter, in our group text, he sent us a link or a report that Jake Gardiner is deciding between 3 teams: the Canadiens, the Jets, and the Sabres. I would seriously doubt that the Jets or the Sabres are offering more than a 1-year deal.
Maybe 2. I think
maybe 2. There has been a lot of question, especially coming out of Toronto, where Gardiner has played his entire career after being drafted by Anaheim, that the back ailment, and you said this, that maybe it scared teams off. That teams might be willing to give him $6.5 million, but the term is severely limited. Has even been some talk that Gardiner would like to come back to Toronto, but that's impossible now with what the trades that they've made. I don't think they can really fit him unless he's willing to take like half of what he would normally take, and that's just stupid to do that. Especially having a back injury, you don't know whether it's going to be debilitating for the length of his career or not. But if it's the Canadiens, they're extremely weak on the left side. That makes sense. We know the Jets are as well. The Sabres, to me, if they added Gardiner, that's another sign that Ristolainen is on his way out.
Oh yeah, I would agree with that. Then I would finally believe that he is on his way out, but still might start the season with him. He might.
Very possible. Let's see here. Just a couple more, and then we'll go and take some questions here.
Right.
Thing is, it's like, I mean, if you look at
stay with Buffalo for a minute.
Yeah.
So Dylan Cousins, they draft him. He gets hurt in development camp. He hurts his thumb, and then they say he had a thumb procedure. Now, again, we haven't heard this since Jonathan Quick's knee procedure. There is no procedure to do to your thumb unless they're resetting it or they're operating on it.
Well, it's funny because
come on, guys.
There was video from one of the local TV stations at the development camp as Cousins was going to the bench, and his thumb, it looked dislocated to me.
Right.
He was holding it, and it was odd position, so It looked like he dislocated his thumb. If that's the case, I know that you can pop it back in, but they basically all the muscles around the thumb are weakened, so they probably have to do something to reinforce them. I don't know. I'm not a hand surgeon. No, all I know is that this is if you're going to have an injury like that, this is the right time to have it 2.5 months before training camp. Yeah. Why not just be forthright about it? Why not?
I know. It's just I don't get these. He had a procedure. Okay. Yeah. I think they did that because he's their first round pick.
Right.
And they don't want it to seem like, he's injury prone or something.
Well, I mean, it's unfortunate, and the thing is, like they said that they would provide an update later this week about the length of how long he'll be out. So, but the point that I was making was after Johansson up front, after Gardner on defense, there's not a lot. Then it's a lot of veteran guys. It's a lot of Adam McQuaids and Dan Girardis and Ryan Spooners and Brian Boyles. Ryan Dzingel might be one of the top ones.
Yeah,
with unsigned free agents.
I think he's probably the top one.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. I think I would take him over Gardner simply because I think there's still a little upside with Dzingel, and so I think he might be the number one or Gusev, and we'll talk about him. People are asking questions about him.
Okay. Well, let's take those questions. Let's go to the chat.
All right. So Toronto Greenhouse wants to know where Risto is going. I don't know if he's going anywhere right now. I think that he's a trade deadline guy. I think they're going to start the season with the defense they had with or without Gardner. That's what I think.
Yeah. I mean, they could start the season. I mean, the right side is rather hefty now because once Bogosian comes back, and we know how long he'll last, but right now on the right side, they have Colin Miller, Montour, Ristolainen, and Bogosian. So unless you're going to have a right shot playing the left side, in November, one of those guys is going to have to sit out, or one of them is going to be traded.
Yeah.
Left side, they're not as strong. They have Dahlin, they have Jake McCabe, but they're definitely stronger on the right side now, which would with a lot of teams not being strong on the right side, would say that there's a considerable market for Ristolainen. Now, Ristolainen's been tied to a number of teams. I've heard Tampa, but I don't know where they make up the cap space. And he's got 2 years left in his contract. So after this upcoming year, so at $5.4 million. So it's a hefty piece. It's a hefty price tag. I mean,
by the way, how's Tampa doing in free agency?
Curtis McElhinney.
I mean, this is 2 years in a row. Julian Brisebois is going to get he's going to get graded on this because right now that team is not really any better.
Curtis McElhinney and Luke Shen have been their big ads.
Yeah.
And they're keeping their powder dry for Braden Point. And then, I have a feeling that, they're going to be they're going to be a trade team and not a free agent team for a while. Because they built up that organization. They have all these young guys like Radish and Mitchell Stevens and Boris Kachuk and Cal Foot and Nolan Foot. I mean, they're a deep, talented, prospect-laden organization, but they don't have the room because they have all these guys like Killorn and Palat and Johnson all locked up on long-term deals.
Yeah. So Thomas doesn't ask a question, but he made a statement.
Okay.
And I think it's similar to the Matt Barzell is going to get 100-point statement. So I want to put it out there and let it be on the record.
Okay.
He said the Islanders will be trading Ho-Sang, MDC, Michael Del Cole, and Letty this summer. I don't think they're trading Del Cole. Could they trade Ho-Sang? Sure. They can't afford to trade Nick Letty. Who's going to be on the blue line then?
I mean, they've got the same 6 that they had last year.
Yeah.
You know, they're all
there.
Yeah, and honestly, I think Johnny Boychuk is getting, I mean, like everybody, he's getting older and worse each year. But you know, he was not very effective last year.
No,
they installed Devin Taves, and he's a quick skating defenseman, and you know he provided them something that they didn't have with some of their other players. And Pulak, we know, has the big shot, but I don't think their defense is particularly strong. And I agree, I can't see them trading Letty. Letty's contract is reasonable, and they need somebody to point the power play. And if it's not Letty, it's Pulak.
Yeah, but he did ask a good question. Could Otto Koivula make the Islanders this year? He could. He looked really good. I remember watching him in preseason and in their rookie game, and he had 21 goals with Bridgeport. And I do think they could look at him because he had played against men. I'm always fascinated. He's 6'4", 220. I think they're going to give him a look. I think there's a good chance. I'm fascinated with the name Otto because it's one of those names, backwards, forwards, it's spelled the same.
It's a palindrome.
Yeah, I can't get past that. Anyhow. All right, let's see. I'm going to go deep into the questions here, I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it. Let's see. Exciting show right now.
Well, I'll just mention this so the Leaf fans can salivate here as you're looking. So Gord Miller of TSN on TSN radio yesterday said he had spoken to an NHL general manager about Toronto's moves.
Right.
And said they had to dip into their forward depth to improve their D, but this is a home run, meaning the acquisition of Barry, the acquisition of Kerfoot, and Ceci. They're still loaded at center, and their blue line is way better. Now they've got the cap space to sign their RFAs, meaning Marner and Kerfoot, and they're a legitimate contender with this defense. I agree with that. The only thing I think is that you have, and this is something that we've said regarding Kyle Dubas and the Leafs in their drafting, and now you look at their roster, and you have, other than Jake Muzzin, really no pushback at forward or on defense. They're a team that is completely and utterly reliant on skill, and that goes completely counter to what Babcock wants. Now, but you know, the thing is, and I said this during the season, Russ, was that, you know, the only way Dubas is going to be able to get Babcock to not play Ron Hainsey 25 minutes a night is to deny him Ron Hainsey, is to say Ron Hainsey's not coming back. So now, you know, who is he going to put on the top pairing when with Morgan Riley when the season starts? More than likely, I think when he comes back from injury, it's going to be Travis Dermott. Because Dermott is a left shot, but that can play the right side.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, both of them are sort of interchangeable. Riley can play the right side. He played right side in junior. He played right side his brief time in the American Hockey League. I know that Dermott played the right side with Erie and with the Marlies.
Right.
So they're interchangeable. Whoever is more comfortable, probably Dermott. The only thing you'd be concerned about is he'd be putting him into that kind of position really early after coming back from an injury. But I think it's going to be Muzzin and Barry on the second pairing. And that's why, like, if they, you know, I don't think they want to put Cody Ceci in a top pairing position.
Right.
So there is some things still in flux, and that's why I think the Leafs are still going going to be looking for a veteran guy. Could I see like Dan Girardi for a couple months playing on the top pairing with Morgan Riley? That would be typical of Babcock. Put a defenseman with his most valuable offensive defenseman.
So here's Jason asked an interesting question, but I don't have a list here. I don't know if you do either, Mike. Like, who's going to be the first RFA defenseman to sign? I don't have a list of the RFA defensemen. I don't.
Well, McAvoy, Werenski, those are the guys off the top of my head that are. Let me just pull it up here. RFA and defense.
Name them off the list. I'll pick one up.
Yeah. Okay. Trouba is still unsigned. Joel Edmondson, McCabe, Werenski, Will Butcher, McAvoy, Provorov.
All right, I'm going to go Joel Edmondson because they just won the Cup. He is a cheaper option than everybody else you've mentioned.
Yeah,
very important to the team. Should be able to get him done.
Well, Boston didn't do anything in free agency. Didn't do anything on July 1.
Right.
Other than lose guys like Achari. And they have two big RFA defensemen in Carlo and McAvoy coming off a run to game 7 of the Stanley Cup final. That is going to cost them.
Yeah. Now, I want to give the Kings some credit. I agree that will cost them. Do you have an opinion on who might be first off that list?
I actually think that somebody like McAvoy will, because McAvoy clearly wants to be. I think they're going to spend the money that they saved from signing the guys like Marchand and Pasternak, who are making $6 million range, and with Chara's money going down, they're gonna. I could see McAvoy getting an 8-year deal for like $8 million a year.
Okay, I want to give the Kings some credit because the other day the Sharks did not qualify Joakim Ryan. He's a pretty good defenseman. You can put him out there for 10, 15 minutes, and the Kings picked him up. That was smart. The Kings also picked up Martin Frk. Same thing. You put him out there. He's got good hands. If you put him on the power play, he's going to get you 10, 12 goals. Like, these are the kinds of plugs right now that the Kings need to sort of get them through this rough spot. So I think that was smart that they picked up those guys.
Yeah, I mean, the teams, I don't know if it's the general thought of everybody now, but I think teams are loading up on players that are sort of interchangeable that they can mix into the bottom 6. I know that a lot of people, like we were talking on July 1 about Toronto signing Agostino. They signed Agostino, they signed Nick Shore, they have Patan, and they're bringing in guys who could probably clear waivers if they have to send them down to the American Hockey League. But if it needed, they can come up and play in the NHL in a spot position. And that's, what a lot of teams, not just Toronto, but a lot of teams need. So I think a lot of teams are trying to increase their depth of players that can step in and instead of trying to maybe force feed some of their young guys in too early.
Let's also bring up, this is a good question. But before the question, like, some of the guys are saying, hey, they're surprised that Ferland and Maroon are out there. Ferland, because, again, he's asking for too much. Now, Maroon, I think he is another one of those guys that, yes, he won a Stanley Cup, but you could see that even during the Stanley Cup, aside from being a physical guy, his usefulness in the league is going down. It was a couple of years ago.
I'll steal a line from my buddy Jeff Merrick regarding Maroon. Maroon was on the trade list, was available at the trade deadline by St. Louis because during the regular season his effectiveness, because of his lack of speed, was not great. But when the playoffs came around, him being sort of that bull in a china shop type guy, he was extremely effective. Now, against Boston later on, Boston was a faster team. Maybe he got worn down. I don't know how he was. You saw more. I saw the games, but you were there, so I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, I looked at Maroon as like, yes, he was a shit disturber.
Yeah.
I didn't think he did enough that would warrant to get a big deal. I mean, he played 20 games, he got 7 points, right?
He's not a top 6 forward.
No.
He's at best a third line guy, and he's probably looking to cash in on the Cup victory and get a multi-year deal.
54 hits, 6 blocks, 7 points in the playoffs. Like, you know what, Patrick? Like, we like you. We'll give you a 1-year deal with like a vested option. If you do X, Y, and Z, it automatically kicks in. That's what I would do if I were the Blues. If not,
I don't think those contracts are. I don't think you can have it.
Do it in hockey. Okay, so then you just do the 1-year deal, and that's it. That's probably what he's getting offered. He may not be getting offered a multi-year deal.
Right, and that's probably what the holdup is. I mean, I think that's probably. I mean, I'm surprised Ferland hasn't been signed because there was so much talk about him at the deadline.
But again, I think he tends to be overrated. All right, Hunter Diaz asks, question for you two: the Ducks don't really have anyone else to sign and still have around $10 million in cap space without putting Kessler or Eves on LTIR. Do you see them doing anything with that cap space? I do. I think they're probably looking for the right player. Like I think if we're looking on this list, like maybe they're the team that will go after Johansson. You know, that because he could do something for them, especially in the regular season for sure.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they do, what they need more than anything is players with speed. And
right. He has that. He doesn't have great speed, but it's good. It's really good. He's a fast skater, and so maybe Johansson is that guy for them. I think they just don't want to overpay for anybody anymore and get right back in the situation they were in.
Right. I mean, right now, I mean, we know that they bought out Perry, so they've moved on from him. Kessler's probably never playing another NHL game. They're now officially moving on to that next generation of Raquel, Silfverberg, Henrique. Now the young guys coming up from San Diego like Troy Terry and Sam Steele and Sprong, who they got from Pittsburgh. So I mean, and Andrej Kasha. I mean, and Nick Ritchie. So I mean, they're moving on. If they can add another player who can score in the 15 to 20 goal range, then I think that works for them. And they really don't have any players of their core right now that are up for a contract extension. So they have the salary cap space to play around with.
Yeah, they do. All right. Is it true, Esmir asks, that Calgary's still looking to trade either Brody or Hamonic? I don't think they tried that hard. I'll be honest. I don't.
Well, actually, according to Chris Johnston, yesterday he did the Steve Dangle podcast, and Nazem Kadri blocked a trade with his no trade clause to Calgary. Now apparently the construct of the deal was similar to the deal with Colorado, meaning the Leafs were getting a center back and a defenseman. And the defenseman that was mentioned was Brody. I can only guess by looking at the Calgary lineup that the center was either Jankowski or maybe Sam Bennett, but Bennett hasn't played much center for them.
No, he hasn't.
I would think it would have been Jankowski. I honestly, I think I would rather have Kerfoot and Barry than Brody and Jankowski.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I kind of agree with that.
But there clearly is apparently some movement in Calgary. I think they want to re-sign Hamonic.
Yeah,
and to do that they may have to trade Brody.
Yeah. Now T2 1983 asks, where do we see Gusev fitting in? It's an interesting one. By the way, 1983 was a good year for baseball cards. I like that design. I think, like, people were asking me, should the Flyers get in on him? They do need a winger. He is really fast and skilled. He definitely would help them. It would take a little bit more, managing, and then not much to pay Konechny unless they could trade Gostisbehere. But that is a guy who would definitely help their offense. He would help any team's offense. He's a stick-handling whiz. What we don't know is, will he be a turnover machine? Like, that's the part we don't know, because he stick handles great, but we don't know how the turnovers will be in the NHL. That's the part you may worry about.
Could the Rangers be in on somebody like that? Because
not anymore. I think they've spent what they're going to spend. Some people think, like Kevin, maybe they'll get another center, maybe. But I don't think they would go in on them. Certainly the Islanders could use them. I mean, if they want scoring, that's a guy. They'll have to give up somebody, but that's fine. Maybe. And what did they say? They wanted a goalie prospect. So, Sorokin's coming over, so give him Soderstrom. I know Soderstrom had an injury last year, but he's a really good goalie prospect. Maybe do that. So I think teams like that, but somebody will take this guy and give it a whirl. But again, boy, you got to just say that Vegas is not having any luck with Russian players.
No. And I mean, clearly right now, I'm still surprised that they haven't moved the Clarkson contract unless they just don't want to pay the price. I mean, I know that people were a little taken aback by the Leafs trading a first round pick to clear Patrick Marleau's contract, but they had to do it. They really had no other option. And if you look at what they've done so far, what they've done since then, it gave them the flexibility to sign Janssen and Kapanen, and freed them up to make some other deals. So, I mean, right now Vegas is sort of in vapor lock until they, Gusev. I don't know. Did he say he doesn't want to play in Vegas, or did he?
I don't know. I hear all this talk that he's. But they.
I mean, I think what I had heard was he wants like a $3 or $4 million a year or something like that. Right. They just simply can't afford it. So
that's probably what it is.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Last question.
We'll go two more.
Okay.
Let's see. Jason says, kind of random, but who would be the next big player to be traded? Example, I keep hoping for the Flyers to move Voracek. Well, Voracek's not going anywhere because no one wants that contract.
Big player.
Big player. Let me think.
Jordan Staal.
Yeah, Jordan Staal. I'm going to go Ryan Getzlaf.
That would be, I mean, teams looking for second line. I mean, okay, Anaheim would have to retain salary. He's got, I believe, 2 more years after this year.
Yeah.
No, 1 more year after. So he's got 2 years. Yeah, I mean.
This would be the time to trade him if you're going to trade him.
Yeah, well, there you go. Well, is Getzlaf slowing down so much that he's a liability as a second line center? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. No.
So could the New York Rangers, if Anaheim retains $2 million a year?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, that could be a deal. And last one.
But apparently Getzlaf has a no-move clause and doesn't want to leave Southern California. And Not yet. Yes.
We'll see if that changes. Esmir asked, do I think Ryan Strome keeps improving this season or will he regress? If I remember correctly, he had a crazy shooting percentage last year. So generally you can't – let me look that up. You generally can't keep that up. But Ryan Strome, I think, has found a place in the league. I know people like Bristle saying he can't play 2C. I mean, I think he could play the 2C part. I don't think that's going to kill him. I think the Rangers' wingers are so strong that – it would be okay. I don't think it would hurt him.
I think he fits better as a third line center, but I don't know if he's good enough defensively to play that role. He'd be
his shooting percentage, was 22.5. He's not going to keep that.
Oh my God,
no, that's so.
His PDO must have been phenomenal.
Yeah, and then it was 17.3 the year before that. So. The year before that, it was 11.4. So it's going to be somewhere around 13. He's going to get more playing time. He'll get somewhere like 13, 15 goals. That's what I think. It's not really regressing. It's the William Karlsson factor. That's what it is. You can't keep that up.
Right. Reality sets in.
Yeah.
All right. For everybody in the U.S. watching, and have a good 4th. Don't burn yourself in any barbecue fires. We'll be back.
How about blow off your finger like JPP?
Jeez.
How about that?
I'm not touching that one.
Okay.
For us going, I'm Michael Agello. Thanks for watching. And remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.